The lake was still dark when Halston Tech Tower lit up against the Chicago skyline, a column of glass and steel catching the first dull hint of morning. On the 40th floor, the boardroom glowed before the sun even cleared the horizon. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Lake Michigan in a strip of cold blue. Inside the room was all polished wood and quiet money. A long table leather chairs, a wall-sized screen frozen on a slide that read, Halston Tech, Meridian Systems Acquisition. Claire Halston stood at the glass, one hand resting lightly on the edge of the window, watching the faint movement of headlights along Lakeshore Drive. Her reflection floated over the city's sharp jaw, neat blonde bob-tailored teal suit. Everything about her looked controlled, as if someone had turned the volume down on any stray emotion. Behind her, the door whispered open. "Your latte, Ms. Halston," her assistant said, setting a white paper cup at the head of the table. "Triple shot oat milk, extra vanilla." Claire turned, gave a brief nod. The cup left a damp ring on the flawless wood. The rich smell of coffee and sugar spread through the room, warm and familiar. "Board still on schedule?" she asked. "Yes. Gordon is already here. The rest are on their way." Claire checked her watch. 6:32. She liked the first meeting of the day before the building filled, and the air turned thick with voices. Early meant fewer surprises. On level 38, in a quiet corridor that never saw executives unless something had gone wrong, a cleaning cart squeaked softly over tile. Eli Ramos pushed the cart with one hand and ran a mop over a faint tread mark with the other. The night shift had bled into morning. His shoulders ached a little, the good dull ache that came from staying busy. He glanced at the clock above the service door. If he wrapped this floor fast, he could be home before Mia left for school. Voices drifted from the executive kitchen. The soft thump of cupboard doors, the hiss of the espresso machine. The air carried the bitter scent of fresh ground beans milk, steaming something sweet. And something else. Eli paused, grip tightening on the mop handle. He drew in a slow breath. The sweetness had an edge, not just vanilla syrup. There was a faint, almost syrupy tang underneath, like the taste of coolant that lingered on the air in motor pools. A smell he had learned to recognize in places where it had no business being. Antifreeze. He stepped closer to the open doorway of the kitchen. Stainless steel counters, two baristas in gray polo shirts moving on autopilot, one cup already lidded set aside on a separate tray. A faint haze of steam curled from the lid. Eli shifted his weight as if the floor itself had gone uneven. "Morning, Eli," one of the baristas called without looking up. "Morning," he replied. His eyes flicked to the set-aside cup. He knew the executive floor routine by now. That tray would go straight to the boardroom, straight to the person at the head of the table. He breathed in again. Coffee vanilla and that wrong sweetness, like something pretending to be harmless. He stepped back into the hall. The smell followed him, thinner now, but still there. It sat in the back of his throat like a warning. He told himself to keep moving. It was not his job to worry about what was in anyone's cup. His job was to make the floors shine and the trash cans empty, to stay invisible. The elevator at the end of the corridor chimed open. Claire's assistant strode out, tray balanced perfectly in both hands, the white cup from the kitchen now settled among a few bottles of sparkling water. Eli watched him walk past, watched the slight ripple on the surface of the latte under the plastic lid. The smell brushed his senses again as the assistant passed. Not strong, just stubborn. His mouth went dry. He turned back to his cart, pushed it 3 slow steps. Then he stopped. 8 years in combat engineering had drilled certain things into him. Pay attention. Trust the quiet part of your brain that remembered what danger smelled like. Ask questions before the explosion, not after. He had ignored that voice once a lifetime ago on a night that still woke him up sweating. Another elevator door opened at the far end of the hall. Laughter spilled out, deeper voices, the shuffle of polished shoes. Board members. Eli looked at his reflection in the stainless panel of his cart, dark hair, cropped short uniform, polo shirt, name patch. A man no one remembered seeing even when he stood right in front of them. He thought of Mia waiting at the window, the way her shoulders lifted when she heard his keys in the lock, the life he had built out of what was left. He also thought of the white cup on the tray heading into a room where a woman everyone watched was about to trust it without thinking. He left the cart where it was. On the 40th floor, Claire walked back toward her chair at the head of the table. Gordon Price, the CFO, sat 2 seats down, scrolling through something on his tablet, his tie already loosened despite the early hour. "You look tired," Gordon said without glancing up. "Then do not look," Claire replied, sliding into her chair. He huffed a quiet laugh. "We are close on this Meridian deal. One more pass on the numbers, we push it through." She reached for the latte, fingers circling the cup. The cardboard was warm against her skin. For a half second, the simple comfort of it cut through the tension in her shoulders. She lifted it halfway. The boardroom door slammed open. "Do not drink that," a voice said rough too loud in the polished room. Every head turned. Eli stood in the doorway, chest heaving slightly, one hand still on the handle of his abandoned cleaning cart out in the hall. He looked like he had run up the last 2 flights of stairs. The room froze. For a moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the projector. Gordon's lip curled. "Excuse me, who let the janitor in here?" Someone near the middle of the table muttered something about calling security. A phone lit up. Claire did not drink. She held the cup steady at chest height, eyes fixed on Eli. He was not looking at her, not really. His gaze was pinned to the latte in her hand as if it were a live grenade. Her voice was quiet, which made it cut through the room more cleanly than any shout. "Put the phone away," she said without looking at Gordon. "Do not move." The murmur died. She set the latte back on the table carefully, as though placing it on thin ice, then straightened in her chair. "You have 10 seconds, she told Eli. "Use them well." He finally met her eyes. For a moment she saw past the uniform and name tag, saw the steadiness in his posture, the calculation in his face, the glint of something that did not belong to a man who only emptied trash. "It is not just coffee," he said, voice lower now, steadying. "There is something in it that should not be there." Claire held his gaze, the room narrowing to the distance between them, the untouched cup at her elbow, and the faint, sweet smell hanging in the air. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Eli could feel the weight of every gaze on him, the way the air in the boardroom seemed to tighten. His chest still rose and fell a little too fast, but his voice held. "It smells wrong," he said, "like antifreeze, ethylene glycol." Gordon snorted. "You can smell chemicals through a lid now." A low ripple of amusement passed along one side of the table. A few of the older board members exchanged looks that said this was beneath their time. Claire did not smile. "How do you know that name?" she asked. "And why should I believe you enough to disrupt a $700 million acquisition meeting?" 8 years in the Army Corps of Engineers, Eli replied. "You learn what is leaking before you touch it. Ethylene glycol has a sweet edge. You do not notice it unless you are trained to. I picked it up in the hallway, then again when your assistant walked by with the tray." Her assistant shifted color rising in his cheeks. "Ms. Halston, I watched them make it," he stammered. "I grabbed it straight from the counter. There was no one else in there." "That you saw," Eli said quietly. Gordon leaned back, folding his arms. "This is ridiculous. We have procedures for threats. We call security, escort Mr. Ramos back to the basement, and start the meeting." He tapped his tablet, already impatient. At the far end of the table, a man in a charcoal suit cleared his throat. Victor Hale had chosen his chair with care, not too close to the head of the table, not too far. He wore a thin silver tie, gray hair brushed back from a deliberate widow's peak. The room lights cut a pale line along his cheekbone. "Claire," he said, voice smooth. "Gordon has a point. We cannot let every nervous employee stall the board. Get facilities to test the machines later, and let us move on." He offered Eli a mild, almost sympathetic look, as if they were both trapped in the same small inconvenience. "Mr. Ramos," Victor said, "I am sure you mean well. You probably saw something on a crime show last night, but there are established channels for this sort of concern." Eli looked at him, noting the practiced calm, the slight tilt of his head. Victor's eyes, a cool, washed-out blue, did not quite reach the level of concern his tone suggested. Claire stayed seated, but the energy in the room shifted around her. She picked up the latte again, this time by the rim, and moved it to the center of the table, out of her immediate reach. "You are all very worried about the meeting," she said. "I am very worried about dying before it starts." She turned to her assistant. "Call building security, then call Chicago PD and tell them we need a hazardous materials field test. That cup does not get touched until they arrive." Her assistant nodded so fast his glasses slipped down his nose. He pushed away from the table and back toward the door phone already in his hand. Victor's jaw tightened just enough to show. "Claire, if this leaks, Meridian will panic. Their board is skittish. Headlines about suspected poisoning at Halston Tech are not the kind of leverage we want right now." "Then let us make sure I was not about to be poisoned," she replied. "If there is nothing in that cup, we all lose an hour. If there is something, I lose a liver." A flush crept up Gordon's neck. He tapped his pen against the table, glancing toward the untouched cup, as if it might suddenly leap into action. One of the older directors, a woman with silver hair pulled into a neat twist, spoke for the first time. "I agree with Claire," she said. "You do not gamble with the health of the person holding the company together." Victor flicked his gaze at her, then back to Claire, reading the room. He lifted his hands in a small surrender. Fine, he said. An hour. The next 30 minutes felt longer. Security arrived, first 2 guards in navy jackets who took up positions by the door. They did not put hands on Eli, but one kept a steady eye on him as if he might suddenly sprint for the coffee. Eli stayed just inside the doorway, back close to the wall, palms empty. He could feel the pulse in his throat slow back to something like normal, but the adrenaline still hummed under his skin. He thought about Mia again. Thought about how angry she would be if he got fired and could not explain why without scaring her. There was a cost to shouting across a room like this. He knew it. He had decided to pay it anyway. When Detective Lena Park entered, the quality of the room changed. She wore plain clothes, dark slacks, a navy button-down hair pulled back in a low knot. A badge hung from a lanyard around her neck. Her eyes did a quick sweep of the table, the windows, the coffee cup at the center, as if measuring distances. Detective Park, Chicago PD, Yusitipu. Pui, she said. Somebody called about a contaminated drink. That would be me, Claire replied. Thank you for coming. The cup is there. No one has touched it since my employee raised the alarm. Good, Lena said. Let us keep it that way. She snapped on a pair of gloves and nodded to the tech who had come with her, a younger woman with a hard case that clicked open to reveal test kits. The board watched suddenly quiet, as if any stray sound might change the outcome. Eli smelled the sharp bite of alcohol wipes as Lena cleaned a small portion of the lid. The scent mixed with the faint sweetness still hanging over the table. His throat tightened again. The tech drew a small sample through the sip hole, then dripped it onto a reagent strip. For a second, nothing changed. The strip stayed a dull, innocent gray. Gordon exhaled, already turning toward Claire. There, you see, this has been a waste of... The strip shifted color, slow at first, then faster. Pale blue bled into deep blue, then into a bruised purple. The tech frowned and checked the legend on the test kit. Positive, she said. Ethylene glycol, high concentration. Lena leaned closer, eyes narrowing. High as in accidental contamination, or high as in someone hates their boss? High as in this would send her into kidney failure within a day, the tech said. Maybe less depending on body mass. A thin, startled sound came from Claire's assistant. He sank back into a chair. The room held its breath again, this time for a different reason. Claire did not flinch. Her fingers curled once against the armrest of her chair, then relaxed. Thank you, she said. Her eyes went to Eli. Lena followed her gaze. You the one who called this in? Lena asked. Eli straightened a little. I am the one who told her not to drink it, he said. Name. Eli Ramos, night crew. Lena studied him. She took in the uniform shirt, the worn work boots, the way he stood. Her gaze lingered on his shoulders, the faint ridge of old muscle memory in his posture. How did you know? She asked. I smelled it in the hallway when they made the drink, he replied. Smelled it again when the tray went past. I have worked around coolant and other chemicals long enough to know that smell. It did not belong here. Victor spoke up, his voice pitched carefully neutral. You understand what you have just done, Mr. Ramos. You have delayed a critical meeting and involved law enforcement based on your nose. Lena turned her head, fixing him with a flat look. He also saved the life of your CEO, she said. So, let us dial down the tone. Color crept along Victor's collar, but he held her gaze. We all appreciate that Ms. Halston is safe, he said. We simply need to be practical. This is clearly a targeted attack. We should handle it internally so we do not create panic in the markets. Claire rose from her chair. The sunlight had climbed higher outside, catching in the glass behind her, outlining her in a pale glow. No, she said. We are not handling a murder attempt internally. She turned to Lena. You will have full access to our security footage staff lists, whatever you need. The coffee was prepared in the executive kitchen. My assistant picked it up there, but he says the machine was unattended for a few minutes while the staff signed for a delivery. Lena nodded. Then anyone with a badge that opens this floor could have slipped in, she said. She flipped her notebook open. I will need names, schedules, and I will want to speak to your kitchen staff, your security manager, and whoever is responsible for upper floor access. Victor stepped closer to Claire, lowering his voice. Let me coordinate with facilities, he said. We can streamline this, keep control of the narrative. Claire shifted just enough that there was a sliver of space between them. Thank you, Victor, she said. Detective Park will coordinate with our legal team. I prefer our narrative to be the truth. For a fraction of a second, something sharpened in Victor's eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by the same polished concern. Of course, he said. Lena closed her notebook. I will set up an interview room downstairs, she said. In the meantime, no one touches that cup, and no one leaves the building unless I clear it. Claire inclined her head. Understood. As the detectives began to pack up their kit, the board members broke into low, anxious conversations. Phones appeared, fingers flying over screens despite the request for discretion. The word would spread anyway, it always did. Claire walked away from the head of the table and crossed to where Eli still stood. Up close, she could see the faint shadows under his eyes, the fine line of an old scar at his hairline mostly hidden by his short cut. His uniform looked clean, but old, the collar softened by too many washes. "Mr. Ramo," she said. He blinked as if surprised she knew his name. "I owe you," she continued, "more than I can put into a memo. You risked your job for this. Why?" He glanced past her at the cup on the table, then back. "Some things are heavier than a paycheck," he said. "I smelled something that should not be there. I could not watch you drink it and go back to mopping." Her expression shifted almost imperceptibly. The edges softened, just for a moment. "Where did you learn to recognize that smell?" she asked. "In Afghanistan," he said, "and a few other places I did not like as much." There was a story behind the flatness in his voice, behind the way his jaw clenched and released. Claire felt the echo of it, even if she did not know the details. She nodded once. "Stay available," she said. "Detective Park may have more questions. So will I." Eli dipped his head. "Yes, ma'am." As she turned back toward the table, the lake beyond the windows caught the light, a hard glittering surface that gave nothing away about its depth. The rest of the morning blurred. Eli to answer Detective Park's questions in a small conference room that smelled of dry erase marker and stale air. He repeated the same details: the hallway, the kitchen, the tray, the smell. She wrote it all down in neat, tight handwriting, sometimes watching his face more than the page. "Any enemies here, Mr. Ramos?" she asked at one point. At some point, he huffed a short breath. "Most people do not know my name," he said. "Hard to make enemies that way." When she let him go, the sun had climbed higher. The lights in the lobby seemed too bright after the shadowed boardroom. People were already talking in clumps near the marble columns, voices low, eyes flicking toward the elevators that rose to the upper floors. He kept his head down and took the service elevator instead, riding it in silence to the basement. The doors closed with a soft thud that felt final. He changed out of his uniform shirt in the locker room, folding it with care and setting it on the narrow shelf. For a moment, he rested his hands on the cool metal of the locker door forehead, almost touching it, as if the steel could steady him. His keys jingled when he clipped them back onto his belt. The sound was small, familiar, a rhythm that belonged to him. Outside, the air had turned mild. Early spring in Chicago, the chill still hiding in the shade of the buildings. Eli walked the 3 blocks to the train boots, hitting concrete in a steady beat. On the platform, people stared at their phones, at the tracks, at nothing at all. No one looked at him. He preferred it that way most days. The train rattled south, past stretches of brick and graffiti, under bridges where old water left streaks like scars. He watched his reflection in the darkened window. His face hovered over the sliding view of the city, transparent, almost not there. In Pilsen, the streets felt narrower, closer. Murals climbed the sides of buildings, bright blues and reds and golds that stood out against the gray day. Eli turned the corner onto his block and saw the familiar shape of Mrs. Alvarez sweeping her front stoop. She paused when she saw him leaning on the broom. "You are early," she said. The sky did not fall at the tower. "Not yet," he said. She squinted at him, sharp eyes taking in the set of his shoulders, the tightness around his mouth. "You eat?" she asked. "I will grab something upstairs," he replied. "Mia in my kitchen," she said. "She finished her homework already. She is waiting for you." Of course she was. "Gracias," Yumaimushet said. "You are welcome, mijo." He climbed the narrow stairs to their apartment. The paint on the banister had peeled in strips, exposing old layers underneath. His keys clinked as he searched for the right one. The sound bounced off the walls. Before he could fit it into the lock, the door flew open. Mia stood there in sock feet and an oversized t-shirt that had once been his. Her dark hair was pulled into 2 messy braids. A pencil stripe of graphite marked her cheekbone. "You are home," she said, as if she had been holding her breath the whole time. He smiled, the first real one all day. "I am home," he said. She stepped aside so he could enter. The apartment smelled like beans and rice, and the lemon cleaner Mrs. Alvarez favored. Sunlight slanted through the narrow windows, catching dust motes in midair. Mia shut the door and immediately wrapped her arms around his waist. "You are squishing my ribs," he said, but he did not move away. "You are late," she said into his shirt, "but not as late as yesterday." "I had to talk to a lot of people who like the sound of their own voices," he said. She pulled back enough to look up at him. "Did you get in trouble?" "Not yet," he said. "I told the truth." We will see what that is worth." She nodded slowly as if that made sense. "They called from the school," she said. "Field trip money is due Friday." "Field trip, huh?" he said. "Where are they taking you this time?" "Science museum," she said, "with dinosaurs and space stuff. Mrs. Lynn says we will see a tornado in a glass tube." "That sounds dangerous." She rolled her eyes. "It is not real, Dad." He let her tug him toward the small kitchen table, where her backpack lay open folders and notebooks spread out. A math worksheet waited half-finished. The sight of it eased something in his chest. Normal life had its own weight, but it was a different kind. "As soon as I shower, we will look at this," he said, tapping the page. He moved through the narrow apartment on practiced paths. Bedroom, bathroom, back to the main room. The hot water in the shower was temperamental, more warm than truly hot. He let it run over his neck, his shoulders washing away the smell of cleaning chemicals and office air. Back in the bedroom, the box sat where it always sat, on the top shelf of the closet. Plain cardboard, edges softened by time. He had not opened it in months. It waited anyway. He reached for a clean t-shirt, then hesitated. His fingers brushed the side of the box. Maya's voice carried faintly from the other room, talking to herself as she read out loud from a worksheet. Eli brought the box down and set it on the bed. For a moment, he just looked at it. The tape had been peeled and pressed back again so many times that it no longer stuck properly. He lifted the lid. Inside lay the life he used to have. A framed photo on top, face down. He turned it over. Rachel in a white lab coat standing in front of a glass wall lined with beakers and flasks. Her dark hair pulled into a low bun, safety goggles perched on her head, crooked smile aimed straight at the camera. He remembered taking that picture, her saying, "You are making this a bigger deal than it is," even as she smoothed her coat and stood a little taller. He set the frame aside gently. Underneath lay his old diploma rolled at the edges. A few commendation certificates from the Army. A map printed on thin paper, creased and worn notes scrawled in the margins in Rachel's tidy handwriting. He unfolded it. It was not a real map of a place. It was her mind on paper. Arrows between trial phases, notes on dosing questions about side effects. At the bottom, a line circled twice. Patient reports blurred vision dizziness, not an official log. He remembered the night she wrote that. She had come home late, shoulders tight, eyes too bright. The apartment had been smaller then, but the smell of her shampoo had filled it anyway. She had sat at the same kitchen table where Mia now did homework, scribbling furiously. "They are pretending it is not happening," she had said. "If it is not in the file, it is like it does not exist. But it does. It is in their bodies." He had made her tea, laid a hand on her back. "You write down what you see," he had said. "Keep your own record." "I am thinking about going to the FDA," she had whispered. "Blowing the whole thing up." "You know what that means," he had replied. They do not get to hide behind numbers and call it acceptable loss. Later, after the accident, those pages had been all he had. That and the memory of her voice cracking near the end of their last phone call. "They know," she had said. "I think they know what I am planning. If anything happens to me, do not let them bury this. Promise me, Eli." Then the metallic screech through the phone, the sound of impact, the sudden silence. He could still hear it if he woke too fast in the dark. He set the map down and reached deeper into the box. Legal envelopes, letters with polite language and hard edges, the settlement agreement, the non-disclosure forms that had felt like signing away more than just words. "Your case is tragic, Mr. Ramos, but these things are complicated," the lawyer had said in a calm office with thick carpet. "Sometimes breaks fail. Juries are unpredictable. This fund will secure your daughter's future. It is the best option on the table." Eli had signed handshaking because the funeral home wanted payment and the rent was due, and Mia was 3 and could not stop asking where her mother was. He had walked out of that office carrying a folder and the sense that something heavy and invisible had been laid across his shoulders. Now, in the quiet of his bedroom, he thumbed through the old documents. The company name stared back at him from letterheads and email printouts. Armitage Biopharma, subsidiary lists, diagrams. At the bottom of one page, under a section about a restructuring after the scandal, a different name appeared. Hale Capital Partners. He had noticed it before and filed it under Too Big to Fight. Today the letters seemed to burn. Hale. Victor Hale. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again. The papers did not change. From the other room, Mia called. "Dad, what does reciprocal mean?" "Give me a minute," he answered. He gathered the papers into a neater pile and slipped them back into the box, but left the lid resting crooked instead of pressed shut. As he stepped back into the main room, Mia sat cross-legged at the table, pencil in hand, brow furrowed over a fraction problem. "You look serious," he said. "This math is annoying," she replied. "You look serious too." "Just thinking," he said. He sat down beside her, the chair creaking under his weight. The window beside them showed a slice of the street, the glass holding their reflections, faintly over the world outside. His face beside hers both a little distorted by the angle. He picked up her pencil and drew a small rectangle on the edge of her paper. "Let us make this less annoying," he said. The week did not go back to normal. On the surface, Halston Tech Tower kept its routine. The revolving doors still sighed open at 7. The security guards still scanned badges with bored efficiency. Espresso machines still hissed in the executive kitchen. But there was a different current in the air. In the lobby, people spoke a little softer. In elevators, conversations broke off when someone from senior leadership stepped in. Someone had tried to kill the CEO with a cup of coffee, and no memo about ongoing cooperation with authorities could erase that. Eli felt it most in the small pauses. The way a junior analyst pulled her reusable bottle closer when he pushed his cart past as if he might spill something on it, just by being there. The way the receptionist in Human Resources stopped mid-greeting when she realized who he was, then covered awkwardly. "You are the one who you know," she said, fingers fluttering in the air, searching for a word that would not stick. "With the coffee." He gave a small nod, not sure what to do with the look in her eyes. Gratitude mixed with discomfort, like she was not sure if he belonged in a thank you card or in a problem file. In the days after the incident, Detective Park and her team set up shop in an unused office on the 15th floor. People went in and out with stiff shoulders and too bright smiles. Kitchen staff, security, assistants. Even Gordon came down once his tie properly knotted for the first time in years. Eli was called in twice more. The question stayed focused on the morning itself, then widened. "Notice anything off in the weeks before?" Lena asked. "Anyone hanging around where they should not be?" He thought about the way Victor always seemed to appear in hallways Claire had just left. The way his assistant hugged a stack of folders like they were more fragile than glass. None of it was technically wrong, just shaded. "I notice dust," Eli said finally. "Spills, doors that stick. I notice when people leave trash on the floor right next to a bin. I do not notice enough to put someone in handcuffs." Lena nodded slowly, accepting the limits of what he would say, or maybe what he could define. If Halston Tech had veins, Eli knew the ones that ran behind the walls. Service corridors, freight elevators, stairwells that executives never touched. Cleaning schedules had taught him the rhythms of the building. When the legal department stayed late. When the engineers on 23 ordered pizza and pretended not to be working past midnight. When the lights on certain floors never quite turned off. The executive floor used to be simple. Early mornings, late nights, predictable meetings. Now it had gaps. One evening, 4 days after the poisoning, Eli wheeled his cart out of the freight elevator on 39. He preferred to work his way up, finishing with the top floors. The cleaning schedule said the executive kitchen could be done after 9 when most of the tower had emptied. The kitchen was quieter than he expected. No baristas, no clatter of dishes. Someone had left a stack of cups by the sink lipstick ring staining the rims. He filled his bucket at the industrial tap, the water roaring for a moment, then settling into a steady flow. The smell of disinfectant rose as he added cleaner, a sharp citrus that cut through the lingering sweetness of syrups. When he stepped back into the hallway, the copier room door across from the kitchen was half closed, light spilling out in a narrow strip. The soft whir of a machine ran on longer than a standard print job. He had passed that room 100 times. Usually it was empty at this hour. From inside came the crackle of paper being fed into a shredder again and again. Short pauses, then another burst. Eli moved closer, mop tilted away from the carpet. Through the gap in the door, he caught a glimpse of a slim figure in a fitted shirt sleeves rolled to the elbow. The man's back was to him, shoulders hunched slightly as he fed a thick stack of documents into the machine. Victor's assistant. The shredder whined under the strain. A few strips of paper fluttered out of the side bin, landing near the door. Eli knocked lightly. "Excuse me," he said. "Just need to get the floors when you are done." The assistant jolted, nearly dropping the stack. "Almost finished," he said without looking up. "Come back later." A strip of paper near Eli's boot had slid just far enough into the hallway to be claiming neutral territory. He bent as if to pick it up. For a second, the words on it were still legible. A company header, Armitage Biopharma, a line of text underneath. Post-acquisition risk review. The assistant snatched it from his hand before he could read more. "Confidential," the man said, tone sharper now. His face had gone a little pale. "Seriously, man, come back in 20 minutes. "Sure," Eli said. He backed away, rolling the mop bucket with him. The citrus smell from his cleaner trailed behind, trying to elbow out the burnt paper scent. In the reflection on the glass of a nearby frame print, he saw the assistant jam the rest of the stack into the shredder's shoulders, tight jaw locked. Eli finished the other side of the floor, first moving through empty offices and conference rooms. He wiped fingerprints off glass-straightened chairs, tossed empty cups. His body worked on autopilot. His mind did not. Armitage Biopharma. He had not said that name out loud in years. Seeing it in print, even in fragments, felt like a hand on the back of his neck. The next clue came in the parking garage. Saturday shifts were quieter, just a skeleton crew on site. Eli preferred them. Less small talk, more space to think. He moved between levels with a portable vacuum cleaning stairwells and elevator lobbies. On level 2, near the executive reserved spots, he paused to empty the canister into a trash bin. The concrete echoed with the distant clunk of car doors and engines starting somewhere. Voices drifted around the corner, muffled by the low ceiling, but clear enough. "Relax," a man said. "She will fold. The board hates instability more than anything." "Victor." Eli knew that voice now, the cadence, the clipped patience. A second voice replied, lower tense. "You promised me this would be smooth," the man said. "The last time you tried to pull something like this, someone died, and it was a mess for months." "The accident worked before," Victor said. "This time it just needed to be cleaner. No vehicles, fewer variables. A heart attack would have been ideal. But coffee works. It is routine. Comfortable." Eli froze. He could not see them from where he stood. The concrete pillar at the corner blocked his view. He could picture it, though. Victor leaning against a sleek car, the other man some outside partner or investor pacing in front of him. "The janitor was a fluke," Victor continued. "Nobody could have predicted that. It does not change the end game." Something in Eli's chest went very still. He stepped back into the stairwell, as quietly as he could, pressing his shoulder against the cool cinderblock wall. The vacuum felt heavy in his hand. Their footsteps moved away, the sound of expensive shoes on concrete, and the remote beep of a car unlocking. A vehicle engine hummed to life, then faded as it climbed the exit ramp. Eli stood there for a long moment, breathing slow, counting to 10, then 20, just to convince his legs to move again. He knew he should tell someone. The thought rose first obvious. Detective Park, security, anyone. He also knew what it looked like. A janitor in a garage claiming he happened to overhear a powerful man half confessing to orchestrating a death. No recording, no witnesses. He had been here before in a different building with different names, trying to convince people that something more than bad breaks had taken Rachel away. On his break, he sat in the dim light of the janitor's lounge, a small room wedged between storage and an unused office. The vending machine hummed in the corner, offering stale snacks behind scratched plexiglass. His phone lay on the table screen dark. He unlocked it and scrolled to an old folder of photos, screenshots of articles from 7 years ago. Local scientist killed in delivery truck collision. Armitage Biopharma under fire for trial irregularities. Private equity firm acquires distressed pharmaceutical assets at discount. He zoomed in on a line in one article. Hale Capital Partners, led by strategist Victor Hale, stepped in to stabilize the situation after the scandal. He had not connected all the pieces back then. The grief had been too raw, the legal threats too fast. Now, with the sound of Victor's voice in his head, the words on the screen rearranged themselves into a pattern he could not ignore. He went home that night quieter than usual. Mia chattered about her science unit, about a classmate who had tried to eat glue on a dare. She held up a permission slip for the field trip, cheeks flushed with excitement. "Can we sign it?" she asked. "Please." "Of course," he said, taking the paper. "We will find the money." She nodded, trusting that this was a fact, not a question. After she went to bed, he sat at the table with the box from the closet open in front of him. The apartment was still the street noise softened by the hour. He lined up the old Armitage documents beside his phone, the same names repeated in different combinations. Subsidiaries, shell companies, buyout terms. Each time a crisis hit, a version of Hale Capital appeared ready to scoop up what was left. Rachel's notes lay at the center of it all, the only place where the human cost was written in more than numbers. He traced a finger along her handwriting, the firm slope of each letter. "They do not get to hide," she had said. He had failed her once, letting the settlement close the door on any public fight. Now someone linked to the same web of deals had tried to poison his boss in the building, where he mopped floors to keep his daughter fed. The weight on his shoulders shifted. It did not get lighter. It moved into a different place, one that let him stand up a little straighter. He gathered the key documents, slid them into a plastic folder, and set it on the corner of the table where he would see it in the morning. In the bedroom, Mia's soft breathing came through the slightly open door. The glow of her nightlight painted a small crescent on the hallway floor. Eli turned off the kitchen light and stood for a moment, letting his eyes adjust to the dim. His keys jingled when he hooked them on the peg by the door, the sound clear in the quiet apartment. He did not know exactly what he would say yet, or how it would land. He only knew he was done holding this alone. Eli woke before the alarm. For a moment, he lay still in the dim light, listening. The building creaked softly around him. Pipes, neighbors, a distant truck on the street. In the next room, Mia snored very quietly, a small, steady sound. The folder waited on the kitchen table where he had left it. Its square outline was visible from the bedroom door, a darker shape in the half-light. He sat up, swung his feet to the floor, and felt the grain of the worn wood under his soles. His chest felt tight, but not like panic, more like he was standing at the edge of something that had been a long time coming. He dressed quietly, careful not to wake Mia. Jeans, work boots, the dark polo that marked him as Halston Tech Facilities. He slipped Fott's folder into his backpack, next to his lunch, and the small thermos of coffee he had filled the night before. At the door, his keys chimed when he picked them up. The sound followed him down the stairs. Morning in Chicago came in pieces. A slice of pale sky between buildings. The smell of bread from a bakery on the corner. A bus seeing as it pulled away from the curb. On the train, Eli stood near the door and watched his reflection flicker in and out of the window as the city slid past. He thought of Rachel in her lab coat, of the line on the article that connected Hale Capital to Armitage. He thought of Victor's voice in the parking garage, casual and cold. He did not rehearse what he would say. Every time he tried, the words tangled. So, he let the train rock him and trusted that when he stood in front of Claire Halston, something useful would come out. He arrived at Halston Tech Tower earlier than usual. The lobby still smelled faintly of floor polish from the overnight crew. Only a few people crossed the marble at that hour, mostly security and catering staff wheeling carts. He bypassed the service elevator and walked toward the main bank of lifts. The guard at the desk looked up, brow furrowing, as he saw Eli leave his usual route. "You need something, Eli?" the guard asked. 40th floor, Eli said. "I need to speak to Ms. Halston before the day starts." The guard hesitated. "You have a meeting?" he asked. "Not exactly," Eli said, "but she told me to stay available. Consider this me being available." The guard studied him for a second, then checked the log on his screen. "Fine," he said. "I will let her assistant know you are on your way up." He pressed a button on his console. One of the elevator's pinged doors sliding open. Eli stepped inside and watched the numbers climb, 15th, 21, 30, 38. His stomach noted the rise even if his face stayed still. On 40, the air felt colder. The boardroom doors were closed. Light spilled from the gap beneath. Voices murmured inside, low and distant. Eli did not slow. He turned toward the corner office instead. Claire's assistant sat at his desk outside her door tie, already straight hair combed so precisely it barely moved when he looked up. "You cannot just show up here," the assistant said as soon as he saw Eli. "This floor is restricted. If you need to speak to HR, you can send an email." "I need to speak to Ms. Halston," Eli said. "Now, if she has a minute, you can tell her it is about the poisoning and that it got bigger." The assistant's eyes widened at the word poisoning. His fingers twitched over his keyboard. "You cannot say that out loud out here," he hissed. "People will hear." "That might be the point," Eli said. The assistant blew out a breath and pushed back from his desk. "Fine," he said. "Wait." He disappeared into Claire's office, closing the door behind him. Through the frosted glass, Eli saw two blurred shapes. A pause. Then the assistant reappeared. "She will see you," he said, sounding surprised. 5 minutes. Eli stepped into the office. The room felt like a different world from the rest of the building. The windows took up an entire wall. The city spread below in shades of blue and gray. A long credenza along one side held neat folders and a single living plant that somehow managed to look disciplined. Claire stood near her desk blazer, off-white shirt sleeves rolled to her elbows. Her hair was pulled back into a low knot, one strand loose near her temple. A mug sat on a coaster by her keyboard, its contents dark and plain this time. "Mr. Ramos," she said, "you look like you did not sleep much." "Neither did you," he said. Her mouth tightened, not quite a smile. "You said this is about the attempt on my life," she said, "and that it just got bigger. That is not the kind of sentence you throw around before coffee." She gestured to a chair. "Sit." He sat, backpack still on one shoulder. The folder inside felt heavier than paper. Claire leaned back against her desk, rather than taking her own chair arms folded loosely. Up close, she looked tired, in a way the flawless makeup could not fully hide, but her eyes were clear. "Talk," she said. Eli unzipped the backpack and drew out the folder. The plastic was scuffed corners bent. He smoothed it once with his palm and set it on the edge of her desk. "My wife died 7 years ago," he said. "Her name was Rachel." Claire's gaze flicked to the folder, then back to his face. "I am sorry," she said, and it sounded like more than habit. "She worked for a pharmaceutical company," he continued. "Armitage Biopharma. She was a scientist on a trial for a new drug. She started seeing side effects that were not in the official reports. Patients getting sick in ways that did not line up with what the company wanted to show regulators." He opened the folder, exposing Rachel's map, the printed emails, the old news articles. Her handwriting stood out in dark ink. "She kept her own notes," he said. "Wrote down what she saw. She talked about going to the FDA or a journalist, someone who would listen." He swallowed. The office was quiet except for the faint hum of the heating system. A week after she said that she was hit by a delivery truck on her way home. Official report said brake failure, tragic accident. He slid one of the articles toward Claire. The headline was blurred from years of thumbprints, but still legible. "Turns out the company behind that truck and the company she worked for both ended up in the same kind of story," he said. "Regulatory scandal, stock crash, then a rescue, a private equity firm stepping in to buy them at a discount." Claire picked up the article delicately, fingertips barely touching the edge. Her eyes scanned the lines. "Hale Capital Partners," she read, "led by strategist Victor Hale." Her voice did not change, but something in the room did. Eli nodded. "I did not put it together at the time," he said. "I was busy trying to pay for a funeral and keep a 3-year-old from drowning in questions I could not answer. The lawyers for Armitage called it complicated. The police closed the file. I signed a settlement so my daughter could eat and go to school." He tapped the folder. "I kept the papers anyway, felt wrong to throw them out." Claire set the article down and picked up one of Rachel's notes. The ink had faded a little, but Rachel's firm, neat letters still traced across the page. "This is detailed," Claire said. "She was good at her job." "She was better than they deserved," Eli said. Claire looked at him over the edge of the paper. "And you think Mr. Hale was involved in more than a financial rescue," she said. "I did not know what to think until last week," Eli said. "Then I heard him in the parking garage." He told her about the conversation in the echoing concrete, about the line that had pinned him in place. The accident worked before. Her jaw tightened. "You are sure you heard him right?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "And even if I wanted to pretend I misheard, I cannot forget the rest. That the coffee was supposed to be cleaner, that I was a fluke." He let the words hang between them. Claire pushed away from the desk and walked to the window. The light framed her shoulders, drawing a sharp outline. She held Rachel's note loosely in one hand. "You understand what you are saying?" she said, not turning yet. "That one of my top executives was tied to a scandal that killed your wife, and is now trying to kill me to repeat a pattern." "I understand how it sounds," Eli said. "I also understand what it feels like to watch people with money and power explain away things that hurt real bodies." She turned, then facing him fully. "Why come to me?" she asked. "Why not take this to Detective Park, to a reporter, someone whose job is to chase this kind of thing down?" "I thought about it," he said. "The last time I tried, every door I knocked on led back to a lawyer who worked for someone like you." Her eyes flashed. "I am not someone like them," she said. "Then prove it," he replied, and heard the edge in his own voice. A beat of silence followed. The city outside moved on unaware. Eli let his shoulders relax a fraction. "I am a janitor," he said more quietly. "On paper. Before that, I was an engineer and a soldier. I know how systems work. I know when someone is running the same play twice. I do not have the reach to pull it apart. You do." Claire studied him for a long moment. She saw the tired lines on his face, but also the steadiness under them, the way he did not look away even when it would have been easier. "What do you want from me exactly?" she asked. "Be specific." "I want you to look at your own books," he said, "at every deal Victor has led, every acquisition with a scandal attached. I want someone on your side who understands money to follow the pattern." He hesitated, then added the thing that had sat under his tongue all morning. "And I want my daughter safe," he said. "If Victor realizes I am the one connecting him to Rachel and to you, he will not care what floor I clean." Claire's fingers tightened on the paper just enough to crease the edge. "You think he would go after a child?" she said. "I think he already killed one mother," Eli said. and that he sees people as numbers on a spreadsheet. Her eyes flicked to the family photo frame on her desk. It held a picture of a younger Claire with an older man both in front of the tower when it first opened. Her father. His absence had carved quiet lines into her. She set Rachel's note down with care. "You are asking me to declare war on my own second-in-command, based on connections that are so far circumstantial," she said. "If I move, and I am wrong, I blow up my company and hand him a narrative about a paranoid CEO who listens to conspiracy theories from the janitorial staff. If you do not move and I am right," he said, "you hand him your company wrapped in a bow, and I get to bury someone else." The words came out flat without heat. That made them land harder. Claire exhaled slowly. "I built this place from a sleepy investment firm into a tech company that actually makes things," she said. "I thought I had an eye for people, for who I could trust. If you are right, then I have been sharing boardrooms with a snake." She walked back to her desk and picked up the folder again, weighing it in her hands. "I cannot promise you an outcome," she said. "I can promise you this. I will have my forensic team go through every file with Victor's name on it, quietly. And I will arrange security for your daughter also quietly. She does not need to know why." His throat tightened. "You would do that?" he asked. "I do not like being hunted in my own building," she said, "and I do not leave children in the blast radius if I can help it." She opened a drawer and pulled out a small black badge, the kind given to vendors and contractors. It had a yellow stripe across the bottom. "This will get you into some places your current badge does not," she said, sliding it across the desk. "Server rooms, certain archive spaces. You move at night? Yes, use that." He looked at the badge but did not reach for it yet. "You are trusting me a lot," he said. "I am trusting that a man who smelled poison in my coffee would rather find the truth than make something up," she said. "Do not prove me wrong." He picked up the badge. It felt light, but the access it represented did not. "What do I call you when we are not in front of your board?" he asked. "Claire is fine," she said. "When we are alone?" He nodded. "Then you should call me Eli," he said. "Mr. Ramos sounds like a school principal." A faint smile touched her mouth. "All right, Eli," she said. "Bring me what you find. I will do the same." He stood, slipping the badge into his pocket. As he left her office, the glass walls of the tower caught his reflection again. This time, for the first time in years, he did not see only a man with a mop. For the first few days, nothing looked different from the outside. The emails from Claire's office sounded like any other week. Follow-ups on the Meridian acquisition, market notes, a reminder about the all hands. The stock ticker on the lobby screen crawled along its usual line. Underneath, something had shifted. A file request from Claire bypassed Victor. A late-night calendar block appeared, marked only as internal review. 2 people from accounting were summoned quietly to a closed-door meeting on 22. At night, when the office lights thinned to a few scattered squares across the glass face of the tower, another layer of work began. Eli became part of that layer. He still pushed his cart along familiar routes, but the badge in his pocket opened doors he used to pass without a glance. Server rooms with cool air and humming racks. Archive spaces that smelled of paper and dust. On the second night after Claire handed him the badge, he stood outside a records room on 19. The door clicked under his hand. Inside, metal shelves ran in neat rows. A single fluorescent strip light buzzed. Claire was already there. She had traded her blazer for a dark sweater, sleeves pushed to her forearms. Her hair was clipped back. A table in front of her was covered in folders and printouts. "You are late," she said without heat. "Elevators do not listen to me," he said. A brief smile touched her mouth. "My team pulled everything with Hale's name on it," she said. "Deals, emails, board minutes. It is too much for one person." "You have a building full of analysts," he said. "They are busy making sure the street does not panic over the word poisoning," she replied. "And I am not ready for Victor to know how deep I am digging." Eli stepped closer, reading labels on the folders. Meridian, Armitage, company names he did not know, each tagged with dates and numbers. "Where do you want me?" he asked. "Start with anything tied to regulators," she said. "Investigations, recalls, lawsuits. Every time someone else's fire turned into our opportunity, I want to know what Hale knew and when." They fell into a rhythm. She read through emails and the formal language of board minutes, underlining phrases that sounded harmless until you read them twice. He traced paths of money and assets and quarterly reports, following how a failing company one year became a distressed acquisition on Halston Tech's balance sheet the next. One night he slid a file toward her. "Here," he said. Armitage. Look at the dates. They bought the logistics company that owned the truck fleet 2 months before the scandal hit the news, not after. Claire leaned in shoulder, almost brushing his. This memo is a week before the first report of adverse effects surfaced, she said. They were already planning how to structure a rescue. She circled a line with her pen. Projected value in post-crisis environment. Her voice had a different edge now. To them, that crisis was Rachel, Eli said quiet, and whoever else got hurt. Claire's hand paused. She did not apologize again. She wrote in the margin instead. Hale leverages human cost. The hours slid by. The building creaked and settled around them. Outside the small window, the city lights spread in a grid. Their coffee came from a hallway machine in plain paper cups. I have not had this since college, Claire said once, turning hers in her hands. You make it sound like punishment, he said. The board imagines I drink from crystal, she replied. This would ruin the image. Do you like the image, he asked. She thought about it. I like keeping the company standing, she said. The rest is packaging. Silence stretched in an easy line. How did you end up here, he asked. In this office with all this glass. She looked at their reflections in the window. My father built the first version of Halston, she said. Bond safe bets, old money. I spent Saturdays on folding chairs in conference rooms while he argued about interest rates. There was fondness there, and something harder. He wanted me to take over, she said. He just did not want me to change anything. After he died, I pushed us into tech. Half the board thought I would sink us. Victor convinced them to give me room. Useful, Eli said. At the time, she replied. She closed the file she held. What about you? She asked. How does an engineer and a soldier end up working nights with a mop? After Rachel died, I tried to fight, he said. Lawyers' meetings. They buried me in paper. The settlement paid for the funeral and set up a small fund for Mia. That was it. He leaned on the table. I could not keep up certifications without a job, he said. Could not get a job without the certifications. The Army was done with me. So I took the first steady work with health insurance and a predictable paycheck. He shrugged once. It keeps the lights on. That is not nothing, she said. For her, it is everything. He thought of Mia's face when she talked about the science museum. She likes to build things, he said, towers out of books. Claire smiles. Smiled. I would like to meet her, she said, then caught herself. If that is not strange. It is, he said, but not in a bad way. They bent back over the files. Some nights they met in the records room under the buzzing light. Other nights they took over a corner of Claire's office, the city laid out beyond the glass, while reports and printouts piled on her conference table. On a late Friday they moved everything to the floor. Spreadsheets, transcripts, market reports. Eli knelt with a marker drawing lines between company names and dates. Claire circled entry points notes in quick script. By 1 a.m, a pattern had taken shape. Each time there was a death tied to a trial gone wrong, each time a company's shares crashed because of an unexpected event. Some version of Hale Capital appeared within months, sometimes in the open, sometimes buried behind bland shell companies. Claire stood with her arms folded, looking down at the web. It is like a storm track, she said. From the ground it looks like bad luck. From above it is a line. Eli nodded. Victor is not just cleaning up after accidents, he said. He is steering into them. She looked at him, hearing more than he said. We will need someone to argue this who does not work for them, she said, when we have enough on paper. He pointed at a cluster of dates near the end of their map. These are recent, he said. The deals you told me he pushed hardest. Meridian, Frostline, Kinetic, she said. He fought me on all three. And they all look the same underneath, Eli said. Pretty revenue on top messy trial data under the rug. She rubbed a hand over her face. So, either I am imagining pattern, she said, or I have been sitting next to someone who treats disaster as a business model. The files on the floor felt like an answer. Later on the train home near dawn, her words about invisibility stayed with him as much as the numbers. The sky over the river was just beginning to pale. By the time he reached Pilsen, the streets were waking. He climbed the stairs to his apartment, keys jingling. Mia was on the living room floor with a drift of crayons. An empty cereal bowl sat on the table. You are back, she said, as if he had come from another country. I am back, he said. She held up a sheet of paper. This is your building, she said. She had drawn the tower tall, and a little crooked windows in careful rows. Some squares were colored yellow lights on in the middle of the night. Pretty close, he said. She added a small figure at the base, a stick person with a line for a mop. That is you, she said. Then she drew another figure higher up behind one of the yellow windows. a triangle of hair, a small rectangle in its hand. "Who is that?" he asked. "The coffee lady," she said. "You said she drinks a lot." He watched her press the crayon along the outline of the tower, darkening it. From the outside, her building was all clean lines and bright squares. Inside, he could still feel paper under his hands and hear Claire's voice as they traced the shape of someone else's plans across the floor. By the second week, the tower felt like it was holding its breath. On paper, Halston moved forward. Emails went out. Deals inched along. Meetings filled calendars. Inside Claire's office, the pile of folders on the low table had turned into something sharper. One night, just before midnight, she stood at the edge of the mess and toed one of the files with her heel. "This one," she said. "Look." Eli came around the table. The room was lit by a single floor lamp and the glow from her monitor. The rest of the office faded into shadow. On the table lay two versions of the same spreadsheet. One was a scanned PDF with the header of a small biotech firm, Frostline Therapeutics. The other was a Halston internal summary. "The trial data Frostline sent regulators," she said, tapping the first. "Adverse events at 3%. Her finger moved to the second sheet. "This is what we received in the diligence packet before the acquisition," she said. "Adverse events under 1%. "Where did the other 2% go?" he asked. "That is what I asked," she replied. "Our team flagged it. The next email in the chain is from Victor." She slid a printed email thread toward him. The text glowed yellow where she had highlighted phrases. "I have already reviewed the raw data," his message read. "The discrepancy is a matter of categorization. No need to bog down the committee with it." There was a smiley face at the end of one sentence. Eli doubted it was meant for the regulators. "He cut you off," Eli said. "He soothed them," she answered. "He told everyone it was under control, and I let him." Her jaw worked once. "How many times did I let him?" she said quietly. He did not answer that. "Your forensic people find anything that looks less polite?" he asked. She straightened. "They found payments," she said. "Side consulting fees routed to a shell company that does not seem to do any consulting. That company links back to a trust that lists Victor's brother as a beneficiary. That is closer to what Lena would call juice," he said. "It is close to a fraud indictment if we can tie it to a pattern," she said. He watched her pick up a pen and mark another line on their growing web. The blue ink cut through the printed names like scars. "You talked to her yet?" he asked. "Detective Park," she said. "Not about this, not all of it." She capped the pen. "That changes now." They met Lena in a back booth of a coffee shop 2 blocks from the tower. No suits, no badges on display. Claire wore a plain coat and a knit hat that hid most of her hair. Eli sat with his back to the wall, where he could see the door and the reflection of the room in the front window. It was late afternoon. The place smelled of roasted beans and baked sugar. A student hunched over a laptop at a corner table. A couple argued quietly near the pastries. Lena slid into the booth opposite them, setting her paper cup down on a napkin. "You know, when I gave you my card, Ms. Halston," she said, "I figured I would hear from your lawyer, not you." "Counsel knows we are talking," Claire said. "They do not know all the details, yet." "That will make them nervous," Lena said. "They live in a constant state of mild panic," Claire replied. "I am not sure they will notice the difference." Lena's gaze moved to Eli. "And you," she said, "back again." "I seem to have a recurring role," he said. Lena took a sip of her coffee and leaned back. "All right," she said. "You asked for this meeting, you picked the starting line." Claire reached into her bag and pulled out a slim folder. Not the whole collection, just a curated slice. She placed it on the table and opened it between them. Rachel's note sat on top, says one with the circled line about unlogged side effects. Underneath lay the article about Armitage, the excerpt with Hale Capital's name, then more recent documents from Frostline and other deals. "We think someone inside my company has been using other people's disasters as business strategy," Claire said. "For years." "We think," Lena repeated slowly. "So, this is not just about the coffee anymore." "It might be exactly about the coffee," Eli said. "Only it started long before that." He talked Lena through the pattern, the trial issues, the crashes, the timely acquisitions with Victor's fingerprints somewhere near the edges. He told her about the parking garage conversation, the way the phrase, "the accident worked before," had landed in his chest. Lena listened without interrupting, fingers steepled under her chin. When he finished, she flipped back to the beginning of the stack. "You understand how thin some of this would look in court," she said. "I cannot arrest a man because he has bad timing and benefits from other people's trouble, or because you overheard him being creepy in a garage." Claire nodded once. "I do not expect you to," she said. "What do you expect?" Lena asked. That when I bring you something stronger, you will be ready, Claire said, and that you can tell me what stronger looks like without a warrant already in your hand. Lena considered that. Paper trails are good, she said. Money trails are better. Direct instructions are best. Anything that shows intent. An email, recording a memo, where someone like Mr. Hale talks about engineering an accident rather than responding to it. She tapped Rachel's note. This is solid, she said. For history. It tells me your wife was brave and that someone wanted her quiet. My wife, Eli said the words, catching for a second. You're Vic. You can say it that way if it helps. It does not help, Lena said, but it keeps my head where it needs to be. She closed the folder carefully. I can start a background workup on Hale and his old firm, she said. Some of this is public record. Some will require a judge. I cannot promise you how fast that part moves. Claire drew a breath that sounded more like steel than air. Do your part, she said. I will do mine. They left the shop separately, back at the tower, days filled with small, sharp moves. Claire stopped taking one-on-one meetings with Victor in closed rooms. When he knocked on her office door, she kept it open, her assistant within earshot. You are distant lately, he said once, standing near her window, hands in his pockets. I am busy not dying, she replied without looking up from her screen. He laughed, but it sounded tight. That is fair, he said. We all feel shaken. You should not be handling this alone. Let me carry some of it. He moved a fraction closer as if to offer comfort. The glass behind him reflected his shape, a long, dark line interrupting the view. I appreciate the concern, she said. What I need from you is stability. No surprises. No sudden moves. He studied her. Is that what you think I bring? He asked. It is what you promised when we hired you, she said. His expression softened. And have I broken that promise? He asked. She lifted her gaze to his. I suppose we will find out, she said. He smiled, faint and unreadable, then left her office. On the nights she and Eli met, the stack of material with Victor's name on it grew. They found a line in a compliance report where adverse event files were marked destroyed per consultation, with a note referencing an internal meeting Victor had chaired. They found a set of draft talking points prepared for him before an investor call after the Armitage scandal, emphasizing isolated incidents and strong leadership through crisis. Does he ever write things down that are not sanitized? Eli asked. Not in channels he expects to be archived, Claire said. So we look where he forgets, Eli said. Security logs, call routing, the places he thinks are automatic. The next night they met with an ally Claire had not told Eli about yet. Her name was Priya. She ran internal security, the kind that worried about networks and firewalls more than guards at doors. Her office sat behind a door with no nameplate and a single camera in the ceiling. She eyed Eli when he walked in, then glanced at Claire. So this is the nose, she said. This is Eli, Claire said. He has been helpful. Priya shrugged. Fair, she said. Helpful nose. She turned to her monitors, a bank of 6 screens glowing with lines of text and tiny video squares. You asked about Hale's activity, she said to Claire, without triggering any alerts. Is that possible? Claire asked. It is possible if I do not write anything down that mentions his name, Priya said, which I have not. She brought up a log file. This is badge access for the executive level for the week before your little coffee problem, she said. Hale's keycard shows up at the usual times. She tapped the screen. But his phone's location data has him still in the building an hour later on 3 nights. The card says he left. The phone says he did not. He gave his card to someone, Eli said. Or used a maintenance pass, Priya said. Or used the stairs. People get creative when they want to be invisible. She clicked again. Also, the camera in the executive kitchen had a 6-minute outage the morning of the incident, she said. Logged as routine maintenance. No ticket, no signature. 6 minutes is enough to pour something, Eli said. Priya nodded. Plenty, she said. The footage before and after shows normal kitchen activity. So, either the universe glitched at a very convenient time, or someone did a partial wipe. She pulled up a different screen. And then there are calls, she said. Your friend Hale has been using conference rooms on lower floors for phone conferences that do not hit our official bridge. The audio is not recorded as part of our usual compliance policy, but the rooms still have mics for AV. Can we recover anything? Claire asked. Priya's mouth curved. You are the CEO, she said. I can do many things. A day later, she slid a small drive across her desk to Claire. This is from a room on level 6, she said. Last Tuesday, 9:14 p.m. Scheduled as strategy session. No one else booked it. Claire took the drive as if it might crack. Eli will be there when we listen, she said. In that case, Priya said, I suggest doing it somewhere quiet and not on email. That night, the three of them crowded around a laptop in the records room. Shelves loomed around them, filled with the paper ghosts of older deals. Priya plugged in the drive and clicked play. At first, there was only room noise, a chair scraping, the distant thump of footsteps in the hall, then a door closing with a soft click. Victor's voice filled the small space, flattened a little by the mic, but still unmistakable. Look, we are almost there, he said. The board is already questioning Claire's judgment after the attack. All we need is a nudge. A second unfamiliar voice answered muffled. You are sure nothing links back to you? The man asked. Of course, Victor said. Everything went through intermediaries, contractors, shell entities. If anyone takes the fall, it will be 3 circles out. There was a pause, the rustle of paper. Besides, Victor said, tone lighter, this is not new territory. You remember Armitage? Everyone screamed at first. Then they cashed their checks. The words dropped into the room like stones. Eli felt his hand close into a fist on his knee. Priya glanced at him, then back at the screen. On the recording, the other man shifted. Armitage was messy, the man said. The scientists, the press, the hearings. You promised this would be smoother. And it will be, Victor said. The accident worked before. This should have been cleaner. A private moment, a tragic outcome. Instead, some janitor decides he has a hero complex. Claire's jaw clenched. We adjust, Victor went on. We lean into her paranoia. We build a case that she cannot handle the strain. By the time this is over, the board will be begging for someone who looks calm. The sound of ice clinking in a glass picked up near the mic. And you will be there, the other man said. Of course, Victor said. I always am when the smoke clears. Priya stopped the recording. The room rang with the sudden absence of his voice. That enough intent for you? She asked quietly. Claire stared at the laptop muscles in her throat working. It is enough to burn him, she said. Eli felt something uncoil in his chest. Not relief, not yet, but the sense that finally the weight he had been carrying was turning into something solid he could throw. The next morning, an email went out from the office of the board chair. The subject line was simple. Emergency session. All directors. Mandatory attendance. The boardroom looked different when it was full. All 20 chairs were taken. Extra seats lined the wall. A few senior managers hovered near the back, pretending to check their phones. The lake outside glittered a strip of silver under a pale sky. The long table held no laptops today, only printed folders in front of each director and a carafe of water that no one touched. Claire sat at the head of the table. Her navy suit was immaculate, her hair pinned back, her expression composed. A discreet bandage on her hand from a recent blood draw was the only hint she was not made of stone. Eli stood near the far wall next to a sideboard. He wore his regular work polo clean, with his name patch stitched over the pocket. He knew he did not belong in a room like this. Claire had insisted. I want them to look at you when we talk about this, she had said. Now he kept his hands loosely clasped, chime of keys. Silenced eyes moving over faces he had seen only in profile before. Directors from New York, London, San Francisco. The kind of people who spent their lives in rooms like this and thought of towers as a natural habitat. Victor sat 3 chairs down on Claire's right. His suit was charcoal, his tie a soft blue, his hair perfectly in place. If he was nervous, it did not show. He had a pad of paper in front of him, a pen laid neatly across it. At precisely 9, the board chair cleared his throat. Thank you for coming on short notice, the chair said. We have serious matters to discuss regarding recent events and the leadership of this company. He glanced at Claire, inviting her to speak. 2 weeks ago, someone attempted to kill me with a cup of coffee, she said. We have not yet found the person who poured the poison. We have found something else. She let the words settle. There was a rustle of paper, a creak of leather. No one interrupted. Before we address that, Victor said, leaning forward, I would like to raise a concern of my own. The chair hesitated, then nodded. Very well, Victor, he said. You have the floor. Victor straightened his notes. Eli noted that he did not look surprised. This was the speech he had planned. In the days since the incident, Victor said, I have watched Claire deal with an unprecedented personal and professional shock. I have tried to support her, as have we all. However, the impact of this event on her judgment has become increasingly clear. He pressed his fingertips lightly to the table. She has delayed critical decisions. She has bypassed standard processes. She has involved a facilities worker in sensitive matters. The market is already whispering. Investors are not kind about uncertainty. He met the eyes of each director in turn. I have also become aware of irregularities in certain internal reviews, he went on. Funds diverted into unmarked accounts. Consulting payments with no clear justification, all under the sign-off of the CEO. He slid a folder toward the chair. The director next to him picked it up, flipped it open, frowned. The folder began its slow journey around the table. You are saying Claire misused corporate funds, one director said. I am saying there are patterns that concern me, Victor replied. Patterns that if discovered by regulators or the press would do significant damage to Halston Tech. For the good of the company, I believe we should consider a temporary change in leadership until we can complete a full investigation. A murmur rose. The chair turned to Claire. These are serious claims, he said. They are seriously fabricated, she answered. Her voice stayed even. Every document in that folder was doctored using real templates from our systems, she said. They are clever. I would almost be impressed if the attempt to frame me for theft were not so pathetic. Victor's smile tightened. That is exactly the destabilizing behavior I am worried about, he said. Paranoia, accusations without evidence, conspiracy thinking. Evidence, Claire repeated. Let us talk about that. She nodded toward the sideboard. Eli. He stepped forward. The room turned slightly, gaze shifting with him. He felt it in his skin. He approached the head of the table laptop under one arm, a small portable speaker in his hand. Victor arched a brow. We are all very grateful for Mr. Ramos's timely intervention, he said polite. That does not make him an expert on corporate governance. I do not need him for governance, Claire said. I need him for history. She gestured to the empty space near the projector. Tell them what you told me, she said. Eli set the speaker down, plugged it into the laptop, then looked up. My name is Eli Ramos, he said. I work nights. Some of you know me as the man who yelled about coffee. A few smiles flickered and died. Before that, I was an engineer, he said. Before that, I was in the army. Before all of it, I was a husband. He opened the folder he had brought, the one with Rachel's photo and notes. 7 years ago, my wife Rachel worked for a company called Armitage Biopharma, he said. She was on a drug trial. She saw things that did not match the official reports. Patients getting sick in ways that did not make it onto the forms. He slid Rachel's note toward the nearest director. She kept her own records, he said. When she started talking about going to regulators, she died in a crash with a delivery truck whose brakes supposedly failed. He did not linger on the image. He let the words do their work. Within months, he said, Armitage stock tanked. There was an outcry. Then a private equity firm stepped in to buy them at a discount. Hale Capital Partners. He nodded toward Victor without staring. Led by Victor Hale, he said. Victor's jaw tightened. I had no idea your wife was involved in that tragedy, Victor said. I am sorry for your loss, but conflating that with what happened here is reckless. You are right, Eli said. It would be reckless if it was only grief talking. He turned the laptop so the Halston logo on the lid faced the room. That is why we brought something else, he said. He clicked a file. Static filled the speaker for a second, then the sound of a door closing, a chair. Victor's voice slightly flattened by the small room mic, but clearly his. Look, we are almost there. The board is already questioning Claire's judgment after the attack. All we need is a nudge. Silence rippled through the boardroom as the recording played. Eli watched their faces, saw confusion, turned to focus. On the recording, the second man's voice came through, distorted by distance, but understandable. You are sure nothing links back to you? Of course, Victor said on the recording. Everything went through intermediaries, contractors, shell entities. If anyone takes the fall, it will be 3 circles out. His casual tone on the audio made the hair on Eli's arms prickle all over again. You remember Armitage? Victor's recorded voice continued. Everyone screamed at first, then they cashed their checks. Someone at the table sucked in a breath. Eli glanced at Victor. His face had gone a shade paler, but he held his posture. This is an illegal recording, Victor said, taken without my consent. That alone should concern all of you. Keep listening, Claire said. On the recording, the conversation went on. Armitage was messy, the other man said. The scientists, the press, the hearings. You promised this would be smoother. And it will be, Victor replied. The accident worked before. This should have been cleaner. A private moment, a tragic outcome. Instead, some janitor decides he has a hero complex. Eli felt every eye in the room flicker to him, then back to the speaker. We adjust, recorded Victor said. We lean into her paranoia. We build a case that she cannot handle the strain. By the time this is over, the board will be begging for someone who looks calm. Claire reached over and stopped the playback. The quiet that followed had a different weight. One of the older directors, the woman with the silver hair, picked up the folder Victor had circulated earlier. "These documents," she said slowly, "if they are fabricated, they shore up that story. A paranoid, corrupt CEO. A calm second-in-command swooping in." She looked at Victor. "You wanted this meeting," she said, "to finish the narrative." Victor spread his hands. "Anyone can splice audio," he said. "Take words from different conversations and stitch them together. You have no proof that is my voice. And even if it were, it proves nothing about the coffee." "It proves intent," another director said, "at least toward the CEO." "It proves you knew about Armitage as more than a headline," Claire said. "You called Rachel the scientist as if she were a line item." Victor's attention snapped to Eli. "I never mentioned his wife," Victor said sharp. "Not to you, not to anyone." Eyes widened around the table. Eli did not smile. "That is interesting," Claire said, "because until today no one here heard her name." Victor opened his mouth, closed it again. For the first time, the smooth surface cracked. The door at the far end of the room opened. Detective Lena Park stepped in, badge on her belt. Another officer at her shoulder. She took in the room in a glance. The laptop on the table, the pale faces, Victor sitting very still. "I hope I am not interrupting," she said. "We were just discussing proof," Claire said. "You might be able to help." Lena nodded. "I listened to the same recording yesterday," she said. "I also have logs tying that conference room to Mr. Hale's badge and his phone, plus a judge who agreed that gave us probable cause." She reached into her coat and pulled out a folded paper. "Victor Hale," she said, her voice steady. "I have a warrant for your arrest on suspicion of conspiracy to commit murder, securities fraud, and obstruction of justice." The room spun a little at the word murder. Someone's chair creaked as they shifted away from Victor by inches. "This is ridiculous," Victor said. He stood abruptly. "Claire, tell her this is a misunderstanding. You know how deals look in the dark. You brought me in for that reason." "I brought you in because I thought you could be trusted," Claire said. "I was wrong." He took a step along the side of the table. "If you let this go to the press," he said, "you will burn with me. The market will not care who signed what, only that Halston Tech is knee-deep in scandal." "They will care that we cleaned our own house," Claire said. Lena moved closer, the officer at her side. "Sir," she said, "keep your hands where I can see them." Victor's gaze flicked toward the door, calculating. 2 security guards had appeared there while he spoke, uniform, solid stance ready. The exit route had shrunk. "Do you really think you can cut me out that easily?" he asked Claire. "You think I do not have friends on this board in this city?" "You might," she said, "but my company has more, and so does the truth." Lena stepped into his line of sight. "You can talk about your friends at the station," she said. "For now, turn around." Victor held Claire's eyes a second longer. "You will regret this," he said. "All of you." No one answered. He turned. Lena cuffed his wrists with brisk efficiency. The metal clicked loud in the quiet room. As they led him toward the door, the glass wall reflected the procession. Victor's tall figure, Lena behind him, the officer. For a moment, their shapes were just shadows moving across a smooth surface. The door closed behind them. Silence stretched. Then the board chair cleared his throat, the sound hoarse. "Ms. Halston," he said, "what exactly have we just witnessed?" "An arrest that was overdue," she said, "and the beginning of repairs." There was a faint dryness to the word, but her shoulders stayed square. "We will cooperate fully with law enforcement," she went on. "We will disclose what is necessary to regulators and investors. We will also look back at every deal Victor touched and make it right where we can." A few directors exchanged looks that mixed alarm with reluctant respect. "And Mr. Ramos," the silver-haired director asked, turning to Eli, "what do we owe you?" He shifted under the attention. "I did what anyone should do," he said. "I saw something wrong. I said something." Claire's eyes met his. "Not everyone does," she said. For a moment, the hum of the building seemed to fall away. The glass walls held their reflections, all of them in a fractured line. Then the chair began to speak about crisis communications and special committees, and the machine of the company creaked into its next motion. The boardroom emptied in waves. First, the directors breaking into tight clusters, voices low and urgent. Then the senior managers already drafting talking points in their heads. Finally, the assistants gathering abandoned folders and half-full water glasses. Eli slipped toward the door when no one was looking directly at him. His heart had slowed, but his skin still buzzed. He could feel the ghost of the recording in the room, Victor's voice layered over the polished wood and glass. In the hallway, the carpet muffled his steps. The view from the windows looked the same as always. Lake sky, distant boats. It felt wrong that the world outside had not shifted. Mr. Ramos. He turned. Claire stood just outside the boardroom, a folder in one hand, the cuff of her shirt showing where she had pushed back her jacket sleeve. There was color in her cheeks that had not been there earlier, a mix of adrenaline and something like relief. "You walked out without letting anyone shake your hand," she said. "I do not think they know what to say," he replied. "I am their boss," she said. "They will learn." For a moment, they just stood there, the murmur from the boardroom fading behind the closed door. "Detective Park wants to talk to you again," Claire said, "but not today. She is busy getting paperwork aligned with that recording." "I will be around," he said, "at least until someone decides the janitor has too many opinions." Her mouth tightened. "If anyone suggests that they can talk to me," she said, "what you did in there took more nerve than anything I saw at that table." He shrugged, looking past her down the hall. "I just told the truth," he said. "Same thing I did 7 years ago in a smaller room with cheaper chairs. And this time people listened," she said. He did not answer that. She shifted the folder to her other hand. "I have been thinking about how to say thank you," she said. "There is not a script for this in the CEO handbook." "You do not owe me anything," he said. "You got justice for Rachel. That is more than anyone else tried." "I owe you more than a line in a press release," she replied. "You did not just save my life. You helped save this company from someone who would have gutted it and walked away." She drew a breath. "I want to offer you a position," she said. "Head of security engineering or investigations or both. We can build it around you. Full salary, full benefits. No more night cart. No more invisible corridors." The words landed like a weight and a lift at the same time. For a second he saw it. An office with a door that had his name. Daylight hours. A paycheck with more zeros. Mia's field trip funds taken care of without thinking twice. The look on her face when he told her. And behind that another picture. Someone in the cafeteria pointing, whispering. That is the janitor Claire pulled up. The one from the story. The curiosity, the pity, the gossip. He shook his head. "I appreciate it," he said. "I really do, but I cannot take that." Her brow furrowed. "You would rather keep cleaning floors?" she asked. "I would rather not feel like I jumped 10 rungs because I happened to be standing in the right hallway with a nose for trouble," he said. "I spent a long time being something else before I picked up a mop. If I move, I want it to be because I can do a job, not because I make a good headline." Claire studied him. "You are not a headline to me," she said. "I know," he said, "but you are not the only one in the building." He glanced down at his hands. "There is one thing you could do," he added. "Two, actually." Her posture shifted, interest replacing offense. "Name them," she said. "First," he said, "I want a scholarship fund in Rachel's name. For kids who lost a parent in the kind of mess she died in. Corporate accidents, trials gone wrong, whatever you want to call it. Enough to cover school for them without their remaining parent having to sign away the rest of their life." Claire nodded slowly. "That is feasible," she said. "We can seed it with company money and let other firms contribute if they have a conscience. Call it whatever you want," he said, "as long as her name is on it and the kids get what they need." "And the second thing?" she asked. He let out a breath. "I want to go back to school," he said. "Finish my license, get current on the engineering side. I cannot afford it on a janitor's pay, not with rent and Mia. If Halston can front the cost, I will work for it. Pay it back by working for you or paying the money, whatever you decide. I just need a way back into the person I was supposed to be." She did not answer right away. The light from the window caught in her eyes. When she spoke, her voice was softer. "Do you know how many executives come to me asking for retention bonuses, stock options, golden parachutes?" she said. "Not one of them has ever asked me to pay for a stranger's education, or their own for that matter. I guess their lives took different roads," he said. "It says something about yours," she replied. She straightened. "All right, Eli," she said. "We will set up the Rachel Ramos Memorial Scholarship. Legal and comms will help me structure it, so it actually works for the people it is supposed to help." She paused. "As for your schooling, consider that an investment," she added, "not a favor. Halston Tech needs engineers it can trust. When you finish, we will talk about the role that makes sense." He felt something in his chest loosen. "I do not know how to say thank you for that," he said. "Do what you always do," she said. "Show up. Tell me the truth. The rest we figure out." The next days filled with movement. Press statements went out. Halston Tech announced full cooperation with the investigation into Victor and an internal review of past acquisitions. The stock dipped, then held, then began to edge upward as analysts praised the board for swift and transparent action. Buried a few paragraphs down in the second wave of coverage, another announcement appeared. Halston Tech to establish Rachel Ramos Memorial Scholarship Fund for families affected by corporate negligence and trial misconduct. The article showed a picture of Rachel that Eli had given them. The lab coat, the crooked smile. The caption called her a scientist whose concerns were not heard soon enough. He clipped the piece and taped it inside the box from the closet above her notes. At work, people treated him differently in small ways. A young analyst brought him coffee once, hands a little shaky. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said. "My mom works in a hospital. If something like that had happened to her and no one listened..." He nodded, not trusting his voice. In a corner office, an HR representative walked him through enrollment forms for night classes at a state college across town. They talked about transfer credits, prerequisites, tuition vouchers. "It will be a lot working full-time and taking courses," she said. "I have done harder things," he replied. At home, the news arrived in pieces for Mia. He told her about Victor without using his name, a bad man at work, a recording, the police. He told her about the scholarship, about other kids whose moms or dads were gone getting help. "Like mom?" she asked. "Like mom," he said. He said. They sat on the couch, her feet tucked under his leg, the city a soft blur beyond the window. "Will they know her?" Mia asked. "The kids?" "They will know her name," he said. "They will know someone like her mattered." She considered that, then nodded. "And you are going back to school," she said. "That makes you like me." "Terrifying," he said. She poked his arm. "We can do homework at the same time," she said. "You with your boring numbers, me with mine." "It is all boring until you build something with it," he said. That night, she pulled out her crayons and folded a piece of paper in half. On the front, she drew the tower again. This time, the windows were straighter. At the top, she wrote in big letters, "Thank you, coffee lady." Inside, she drew 3 stick figures. One tall, one medium, with a triangle for hair, one small with braids. They all held hands. "Can you give it to her?" Mia asked, sliding the card across the table. "I can try," he said. The next morning, he left the card with Claire's assistant, who looked at it for a second longer than necessary before setting it gently on top of her schedule. That Saturday, just before dinner, someone knocked on the apartment door. Eli wiped his hands on a dish towel, expecting Mrs. Alvarez or a neighbor with a package. When he opened the door, Claire stood in the hallway. She wore jeans and a soft gray sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. In one arm, she held a paper bag from a grocery store. In the other, a board game with bright colors on the box. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, the fluorescent light in the hallway buzzing. "I hope this is not strange," she said. "Mia sent me an invitation in crayon. I thought it was an order rather than a request." Behind Eli, Mia's voice piped up. "Is it her? Is it the coffee lady?" She darted into ViewSock, sliding on the floor, eyes wide. "You came," Mia said. Claire's shoulders eased. "I did," she said. "I brought pasta and tomatoes in case I am allowed in the kitchen." Eli stepped back, holding the door open. "Fair warning," he said. "It is spaghetti night. The chef is very demanding about her sauce." "I can follow orders," Claire said. The apartment smelled like garlic and onion. Mia had lined up jars of spices on the counter, small hands already orange from crushed tomatoes. The 3 of them moved around each other in the narrow kitchen, bumping elbows, laughing when the pasta water boiled over, and Mia shrieked with delight. At the table, the spaghetti tasted better than it should have for something that came from a budget grocery list. Mia announced that the secret ingredient was love and too much oregano. Claire solemnly agreed. After dinner, they cleared plates. Eli washed Claire-dried, Mia stacked dishes with serious concentration. The domestic rhythm felt easy in a way that surprised him. Later, the board game spread across the coffee table. Mia beat them both, crowing with satisfaction. At some point, she ended up half sprawled between them, on the couch, head drifting against Claire's side, eyes drooping. When her breathing evened out, Eli went quiet at the sink, rinsing the last glass. He looked back at the couch. Claire sat very still, one hand resting lightly on Mia's hair. The light from the lamp softened her features. The city glowed faintly through the window, their reflections layered over the view. "This feels strange," she said quietly, when he came back, not wanting to wake the girl. "In a good way. Not many board meetings end like this," he said. She looked down at Mia, then up at him. "Thank you for letting me be here," she said. He sat on the other end of the couch, close enough to feel the warmth of them both. "Seems fair," he said. "You saved more than a company." She did not answer, but her fingers moved gently through Mia's hair, and the room settled into a quiet that did not feel empty. Spring turned into summer before they noticed. The snow along the river disappeared. Trees in the parks leafed out. The wind off the lake stayed sharp, but the light felt less thin. On the 3rd floor of a state college on the west side, Eli sat in a classroom with desks too small for his knees. A whiteboard at the front held a half-erased equation. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Students in hoodies yawned and scrolled their phones. He sat up straight, pencil moving across his notebook. Statics, load distributions, moments, numbers and lines that used to be muscle memory. At first, his brain had creaked like an old door. Slowly, the hinges loosened. Halfway through the term, his professor stopped at his desk after class. "You have done this before," she said. "A lifetime ago," he replied. She smiled. "Some things stay," she said. He thought of that later, when he sat at the kitchen table, with Mia, both of them bent over homework, her spelling words, his problem set, 2 piles of paper, 2 mugs of cheap cocoa, 1 box of crayons. "Your numbers look worse than mine," she said, peering at his calculations. "They will look better when I erase less," he said. She grinned. "You will catch up," she said. "You are stubborn." She got that from both parents. At Halston, Tech rebuilding began in small steps. Internal memos shifted from crisis tone to plans. The Rachel Ramos Memorial Scholarship Fund went live with more contributions than Claire had expected. A few rival firms quietly added their names, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps out of fear of being next. The reason mattered less than the checks clearing. At a small event in the tower lobby, under the glass ceiling and the watchful eye of photographers, Claire spoke into a microphone, while Eli stood off to the side, hands in his pockets. "We owe more than we can say to the people who spoke up and those who did not get the chance," she said. "This fund is one way to honor that." Behind her, a plaque hung on the wall. Rachel Ramos Memorial Scholarship for families affected by corporate negligence and trial misconduct. Rachel's photograph sat in a simple frame beside it, her lab coat and crooked smile exactly as Eli remembered. He watched a woman in a nurse's uniform pause to read the words, her fingers brushing the engraved letters once, as if checking they were real. Detective Lena Park attended in plain clothes. She nodded at Eli across the crowd. "Audio tested clean," she had told him a few weeks earlier. The judge liked it. So did the jury. Victor had traded his window office for a cell. The trial had been steady and dry, full of documents and charts. In the end, the recording had cut through the paperwork. The words "the accident worked before" had played to a silent courtroom. The jurors had watched him with the same expression Eli had seen in the boardroom once, calculating, then done. One evening in late summer, Eli stood in a different auditorium, this one on the college campus. Rows of folding chairs faced a stage where a banner read, "Engineering Recertification Program Graduation." He wore a rented gown that hung a little awkwardly on his frame. The cap sat crooked no matter how many times Mia tried to fix it. "You look fancy," she said, stepping back to admire him. "I look like a lamp," he said. "You look like my dad who finished something hard," she said. Claire sat beside her in the second row, a small bouquet in her lap. She had insisted on flowers, even when he said it was unnecessary. "You get flowers when you cross a stage," she had told him. "It is the rule." When his name was called, he walked across the stage accepting the certificate from the dean. The applause from the crowd blurred into a wash of sound. One set of hands clapped louder than the rest. Mia stood as he reached the stairs down, bouncing on her toes. Claire rose more slowly, but her face shone with the same pride. Outside, the sun hung low over the parking lot, turning the cars into bright shapes. Mia took his hand in one of hers and Claire's in the other. "So now you are an engineer again," Mia said. "Are you still a janitor too?" "Not officially," he said, "but I still know how to fix a vacuum when it eats a paper clip." She scrunched her nose. "Good," she said. "That thing is scary." In the months that followed, his job title changed on the company directory, Head of Sustainable Engineering, Halston Tech. The office they gave him was small by executive standards, with one glass wall and a view of the river between 2 taller buildings. His work looked different now. He spent his days in meetings with designers and project managers and sometimes Priya from security planning systems that used less power and wasted less of everything. He liked it. The numbers turned into real changes. New materials, new designs, floors that shone without harsh chemicals. He still walked the old routes sometimes, through service corridors, past the executive kitchen. The camera that had blinked out 6 minutes on a bad morning now had a new log system and redundant backups. Priya had shown him the code. "Just in case someone gets creative again," she had said. One Friday evening, he stayed late to finish a report. The building emptied around him. Floors went dark in stages. From his office, he could see the reflection of his own window in the tower opposite. He saved the file, shut down his computer, and took the elevator to the lobby. His keys felt lighter on his belt these days. He still clipped them there out of habit. The chime when he walked into his apartment was part of how Mia measured the day. At home, the smell of pancakes reached him before he opened the door. It was not Sunday, but that did not seem to matter. Inside, Mia stood on a chair by the stove, spatula in hand. Claire was at the counter mixing something in a bowl. Both wore flour on their shirts. "You are early," Mia said. "You are messy," he replied. Claire turned cheeks pink from the heat, and maybe something else. "We had a long argument about whether pancakes are only for mornings," she said. "We have decided they are not." "Science experiment," Mia added. "We are testing if they taste better at night." "Important research," he said. They ate at the small table plates crowded with uneven circles of batter, some darker than others. Syrup pooled in the shallow chips in the wood. Mia talked about a book they were reading in class. Claire told a story about a junior analyst who had accidentally sent a spreadsheet full of emojis to a client. After dinner, Mia disappeared into her room to build a fort out of blankets. Eli rinsed dishes. Claire stood beside him, drying. "This place feels different now," she said. He glanced around. The same couch, the same peeling paint near the window, a new drawing on the fridge of 3 stick figures, hands linked. "It is the same walls," he said. She bumped his shoulder with hers. "You know what I mean," she said. He did. Later, they joined Mia in the blanket fort, lying on their backs, staring up at the patchwork ceiling. The sounds of the building filtered through. A neighbor's television, someone laughing 2 floors down, the soft rush of traffic outside. Mia wedged herself between them, head on his shoulder, feet on Claire's legs. "If we sleep in here, does it still count as sleeping in our own beds?" she asked. "It counts as camping," he said. "In the city," Claire added. Mia yawned. "City camping," she murmured, and then she was out, breaths deep and even. They lay there in the soft dark, listening. "I love you," Eli said. The words had sat in his chest for weeks, maybe months. They came out quiet, but sure. Claire turned her head. In the dim, he could make out the curve of her mouth. "I love you too," she said. "Both of you." "Does that mean you are my mom now?" Mia asked, voice thick with sleep eyes still closed. They both stilled. Eli felt Claire's hand find his under the blanket. "I could never replace your mom," Claire said. "She is always part of you, and part of your dad. That does not change." Mia squirmed closer. "But you can be here," Claire added. "If you want that, and if he does." Eli squeezed her fingers. "I do," he said. Mia made a small, thoughtful sound. "You make Dad less sad," she said. "I think Mom would like that." Tears pricked his eyes, unexpected and sharp. He let them blur the edges of the blanket fort. It felt right that the world softened a little. Later, after they moved Mia to her bed and turned off the main lights, he and Claire stepped out onto the small balcony. The metal railing was cool under his hands. The city stretched out before them, a grid of lights and dark spaces. Through the glass door, he could see their reflection. 2 figures side by side. Inside, a lamp glowed over the table. Mia's drawings covered the fridge. His keys hung on the hook by the door, still for once. Claire slipped her arm through his. "When I first took that office," she said, nodding toward the direction of the tower, "I thought the height would make me feel powerful. Mostly it made me feel distant." "And now?" he asked. "Now it is just where I work," she said. "This is where I live." He rested his forehead lightly against hers. The sounds of the city rose up to meet them. A siren in the distance. Music from a car at the light. Someone calling to someone else on the sidewalk. Behind the glass, their reflection stayed framed by the apartment. Not sharp, not perfect, real enough. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.